She was a country music legend whose life ended way too soon. 60 years ago, she died in a terrible plane crash, and it's rumored that she knew her time was coming. We're discussing what happened with Patsy Cline on Taking Off. Welcome to Taking Off. I'm Christy Wong. Our country music legend was the one and only Patsy Cline. She had such a unique voice and was considered one of the most influential artists of her time. She even had an influence on me as a child, as I grew up listening to her music. She would become the first solo female artist elected to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and she would inspire the future of country music, although her path to stardom didn't come easily. But to her family, she was Ginny. Patsy Cline was born Virginia Patterson Hensley on September 8, 1932. Her mother, Hilda, was only 16 years old and had married the much older Samuel Hensley. Following the Great Depression, blacksmith Sam moved his family all around the state of Virginia several times looking for work. The family would move something like 19 times in the first 15 years of Ginny's life. Financial and marital strains finally came to a head in the Hensley household, and Ginny's parents split up. Her abusive father abandoned the family, and her mother would settle them in a house in Winchester, Virginia. The family was so poor that young Ginny dropped out of high school to find work. She developed an interest in singing after developing a throat infection at age 14. She came out of it with this booming voice and a desire to sing, something she had picked up from her amateur singer father. That same year, a local area disc jockey ran into Ginny and her mom at the radio station, and he gave her an opportunity to sing live on the air. Ginny took that opportunity and ran with it. Not only did she sing live that day, she continued performing on that local radio station as well as singing in local talent contests, and then she started finding work in nightclubs and juke joints. From that point on, Ginny was hooked. She had a one-track mindset from that moment forward to sing for a living. At the age of 15, she wrote to the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, asking for an audition. She did get the audition, but she didn't hear back after performing, so she headed back to Virginia, not giving up, and eventually performing regularly for bandleader Bill Peer. During one of their band tours in Brunswick, Maryland, she met a local contractor named Gerald Klein. Gerald gave Ginny the stability she'd never really had, and the two were married shortly after meeting when Ginny was just 20 years old. It was around this time that Bill Peer encouraged Ginny to have a more appropriate stage name, so he started calling her Patsy after her middle name, Patterson. Thus, Patsy Cline was born. In 1953, Patsy won a local country music contest and began performing on TV. Bill Peer also began sending out demo tapes of Patsy's performances, and it wasn't long before she had a music contract. In 1954, she signed with 4-Star Records, but her recordings fell flat and she had mixed reviews with 4-Star. She continued touring, but it wasn't until January of 1957 that Patsy had her first breakthrough hit. She would perform on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, a national television show that she had auditioned for, where the show's producer asked her to sing a little song called Walkin' After Midnight. This performance initially launched her into success. However, all of the touring had taken its toll on her marriage with Gerald. He wanted her to be a more conventional housewife, and she wanted to be a professional music artist. After only 4 years of marriage, the couple divorced. Patsy had already met her next husband, Charlie Dick, while she was performing in Winchester, Virginia. Charlie worked for the local newspaper and had asked Patsy to dance at one of the clubs. The two became close, and the rest is history. They married quickly after and had 2 children together. Patsy's career didn't hold as much steam as she wanted following her Walkin' After Midnight performance, though. Things were very up and down. In fact, she was losing performance slots due to her tardiness and also showing up with alcohol on her breath. She wanted an opportunity to refresh and boost her career, so she and Charlie moved their family to Nashville. Once there, she signed with manager Randy Hughes, which would prove to later be very fateful. He started getting her steady gigs, even booking her for the Grand Ole Opry. And in 1960, Patsy's dream came true. She officially became a member of the Opry. After that, she signed with Decca Records, releasing the song I Fall to Pieces. That one truly propelled her into stardom. Things were really looking up for Patsy when on June 14, 1961, her and her brother were involved in a near-fatal car accident. They had been hit head-on by another car and she wasn't expected to live. She had extensive facial injuries, a dislocated hip, a broken wrist, just to name a few. But after surgery and a month recovering in the hospital, she was released. She told her husband it wasn't her time to go and that she still had more to accomplish. Her song Pieces had just started climbing the charts, and she followed up with the song Crazy, which would go on to become iconic in country music. She was starting to see real success, recording a third album and, in 1962, becoming the first female country artist to headline her own show in Las Vegas. But it was around this time that Patsy started having premonitions of her death. She began telling friends and family her sense of impending doom, as though she didn't have much time left. And as eerie as it sounds, she even wrote a will of sorts on an airline napkin, asking that her children be left with her mother, Hilda. But she continued on, recording more hits in early 1963. And on March 3rd of that year, Patsy was booked to perform at a benefit concert in Kansas City. It was a star-studded show with nearly a dozen performers. Despite suffering from a cold, she would perform 3 shows that day, all of which were packed with standing room only. The final song she would sing was I'll Sail My Ship Alone. The next day, March 4th, Patsy was to fly home but was unable due to poor weather conditions. The airport had been fogged in, prompting another night in Kansas City. Her friend and fellow performer, Dottie West, asked Patsy to ride with them in their car as she was concerned about her flying in the poor weather conditions. They were going to make the 8-hour drive back home to Nashville. But Patsy reportedly told Dottie, "Don't worry about me. When it's my time to go, it's my time." And with that, she made the fateful decision to fly home with her manager, Randy Hughes, as the pilot. Along with them were fellow performers, Cowboy Copas and Hawkshaw Hawkins. Randy had gotten his private pilot certificate for the purpose of transporting his musicians to and from concerts. It proved to be faster and much more convenient than driving. So around 2 p.m. the following day, March 5th, 1963, the 4 of them climbed into Randy's 3-year-old Piper PA-24 Comanche, November 7000 Papa. This one really hits my emotions especially hard, since many of you know that my good friend Brian Turner of Just Plain Silly owns and flies a Piper Comanche. I've actually flown it with him several times. It's a great airplane, easy to fly, and overall pretty rock solid. The 4-seater plane had a 250 horsepower Lycoming engine with 60 gallons of fuel capacity, which is around 600 nautical miles of flying. Brian's plane, a 1961, is very similar to the accident airplane. The only difference is that Brian's plane has the capacity to carry about 30 more gallons more of fuel. The group departed Kansas City and headed towards Rogers, Arkansas for a quick refueling. Their flight path may have seemed a little unconventional. They were flying almost due south to then fly due east. However, they had to dodge storms from a front that was rolling through the area. They then departed Rogers and headed eastbound toward Dyersburg, Tennessee, where they fueled again and got a weather brief from an FAA employee at the airport named Leroy Neal. It was just after 5 p.m. and the briefing Leroy gave stated that the conditions were turning marginal at their location and reporting lower than VFR minima in Nashville. But Randy, feeling confident in his abilities, stated to Leroy that he would just fly east toward the Tennessee River and then navigate to Nashville from there, as he was familiar with the terrain. Even the airport manager tried to talk Randy out of going. Randy reportedly said, "Well, I've come this far already. We'll be back in Nashville before you know it." He assured them that if it got too bad, he would just turn around and come back to Dyersburg. With that, the 4 piled back into the yellow Comanche and departed Dyersburg at 6:07 p.m. No more radio calls would be made from 00 Papa. The weather reported at the time had dropped to a 500-foot ceiling with visibility of 5 miles, and it was gusty and turbulent. It should be noted that Randy was a private pilot with only 160 total hours and no instrument rating. A short time after departing, a witness reported hearing a low-flying aircraft, and he ran outside as he got concerned. The witness was himself a pilot and knew that low-flying aircraft, especially in those conditions, was not normal. He watched as the Comanche descended through the overcast at a 45-degree angle. Seconds later, he heard the sound of a crash followed by silence. The witness notified the highway patrol as soon as he could get to a phone, around 7 p.m. They began the search right away, but it wasn't until a little after 6 a.m. the following morning that the wreckage was finally discovered. There were no survivors. Patsy's watch was found and had stopped at 6:20 p.m., the exact moment of the crash. The ensuing investigation found that there was nothing mechanically wrong with the plane. It appeared that Randy had lost his visual reference with the ground as he entered those low visibility conditions and became spatially disoriented. He went into a right-hand diving turn, also known as a graveyard spiral. This happens when pilots lose visual reference to the ground and start an unintended turn. It's especially prevalent with pilots who don't have the training or experience to fly using just their instruments. And it's not always easy to tell when you're turning without a visual reference. The inner ear can play tricks on us, making us believe that we're flying straight and level when we're actually turning, or that we're in a turn when we're not. It happens even more so in turbulent conditions. This phenomenon is sometimes referred to as the leans, and it's very important that when this happens, you immediately rely on your instruments to get you reoriented. It's not uncommon for this to happen with pilots, but with the proper instrument training and experience, it can be overcome and the flight can proceed on safely. But Randy did not have the training or the experience to overcome the spatial disorientation that he was in. When he finally broke out of the clouds and got a visual reference to the ground, he attempted to pull out of the spiral and applied full power, but it was too late. Evidence showed that the propeller was turning at maximum RPMs at the time of impact. The plane's propeller contacted a 30-foot tree as it was descending, which led to the right wing clipping a tree and sending the plane downward, impacting the ground at around 175 miles per hour. It only took 2 seconds from the first tree contact to ground impact. Everyone on board died immediately. This crash shocked the world. Patsy Cline's ominous premonitions came true when she died at just 30 years old. She broke the mold in so many ways, paving opportunities for modern women in the country music industry. She wore pants and cowboy boots, which was unheard of for women at that time. So many female country artists would follow the path that she paved. She, as well as the other 2 passengers, entrusted their lives in the abilities of manager and pilot Randy Hughes. And as with so many others, he went far beyond his skill set. I want to make it clear, I am not trying to demonize him. It's just upsetting when this happens because it's so avoidable. I wanted to talk more about Randy Hughes and what kind of experience as a pilot he had, but honestly, there just wasn't a lot of information out there. He was a new and inexperienced pilot who learned to fly and bought the airplane out of utility to get his musicians to and from concerts. I don't think he was a bad guy or even a bad pilot. He had good intentions, but overestimated his abilities for the conditions that night. There are many more stories out there just like this one, but it's one that left a lasting impact on the world and continues to do so today. It's a similar story to what happened with Buddy Holly, a pilot flying in conditions he wasn't experienced enough to fly in. But Randy seemed to be overcome by get-there-itis, a propensity to get to your destination even when conditions are dangerous, which led him to make unsafe decisions. Have you ever had a case of get-there-itis? Leave your comments below. We'd like to know how you overcame it. After her death, Patsy Cline continued to have her pre-recorded songs released, and she would become the first solo female artist elected to the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1973. It's hard to imagine what other success she would have seen had it not been for that fateful March evening. Patsy may have had ups and downs in her personal and professional life, but just to show you the kind of person she was. When her abusive father was on his deathbed, Patsy convinced her mom to go and visit him one last time so she could make peace and find closure. She was a warm and trusting person, which is probably why she trusted Randy's judgment to fly that night. We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us make videos like this one. It's not easy discussing topics when life has been lost, but we can hope to learn from it so it doesn't keep happening. Please take a moment to check out their links in the description below. Supporting them helps support us. We vet all of our sponsors and pick ones that have great services or products, and they're all run by pilots, so we can keep it in the aviation family. You can check out our review of the Buddy Holly crash here. Thank you for watching and supporting our channel, and we'll see you next time on Taking Off.